All right, well, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us. Today's July 23rd. It's the Hollywood Squares version of the Public Affairs Forum, and we're joined by candidates for the Office of Insurance Commissioner. Today we have candidates Anthony Welty and Rahul Patel. And unfortunately, Mike Kreidler will not be joining us today. He's also a candidate for the race. As Miriam mentioned, we couldn't do this without the fine folks at Peninsula Light Company who continue their ongoing sponsorship and support of the Public Affairs Forum, and of course, the support from the Gig Harbor Chamber of Commerce is certainly appreciated. So we thank you all for joining us today. We want to remind you to keep your microphones muted, and we will be using the chat box. So please use the chat box for submitting your questions to our candidates today. The questions should be crafted in such a way that the candidates can both answer and talk about their candidacy in a fair and open manner. We really only have time for you to submit one question. If you have a second question, I'll certainly circle back and get any seconds if we run out of questions from our other guests. So with that, we are ready to launch. We thank you all for joining us. And we're going to start with 2-minute opening comments. And our first candidate, Anthony Welty, is on the floor. Thank you, Anthony, for joining us.
Yeah, and I appreciate the Gig Harbor Chamber of Commerce putting this event on. It's so important that the public gets opportunities to meet with, candidates for office. So thank you guys for hosting this. And, specifically through this, crisis that we're going through, I just wish all your businesses well. I know small and medium businesses are really the lifeblood of individual communities. So I just, hope your businesses are surviving well, and I'll do everything I can in office to be an ally to small business. I'm running for this position of state insurance commissioner for a handful of reasons, but it's very personal to me. In 2015, I was a newlywed husband and I had an infant child on the way. And 3 months after my son was born, we lost access to the health insurance policy that we had purchased a couple years prior that was affordable for what we wanted and covered things that brought value to our lives. That's not a story unfamiliar with many, many, many people around the country and many people here in the state of Washington. And what compounded that issue was for the years 2015, 16, 17, and 18, I was fined by the federal government for not having insurance. That made paying for medical care even more difficult, putting us at higher risk at a very vulnerable point in our life. Having medical coverage in the state of Washington has become increasingly expensive. Having insurance coverage for your small business, for your car, for your home has become increasingly expensive. I want to do everything I can for the state of Washington to make government and insurance more accountable, more affordable, and more accessible. I've been traveling the state for nearly 3 years now, campaigning for this role because it is so important to me so that I can get in there and represent each and every single one of you from all corners of the state of Washington.
Thank you, Anthony. And next we'll hear opening comments from candidate Rahul Patel.
All right. Hi, thank you so much for having me. My name is Chirayu Patel, or Rayu for short. I'm running to be the 9th Insurance Commissioner of the state of Washington because I'm tired of the corruption in the industry. I'm tired of the way things are going. There's so much corruption. We live in a time period where there's more honorable, civic-minded bootleggers than insurance industry professionals. Someone with the ability to go in and clean up the industry needs to be go in, and someone has to go and enforce the Constitution of the United States. No corporation, however big you are, is allowed to violate the Constitution of the United States. Currently, the way the entire auto insurance industry is operating, it can be operated there's constructive competition and then there's destructive competition. That is the way that currently the auto insurance industry not just in Washington State, but in every state in the United States is operating very destructively, and it's not good for the consumer. As a matter of fact, there's so many exclusions in the auto insurance that there's so many inefficiencies that if you streamline the inefficiencies in the way the auto insurance industry is operating, it would lead to fewer exclusions and better coverage for consumers. In auto insurance, saving money is not a good thing. You get what you pay for, and there's honorable ways to save money, and there's dishonorable ways to do it. And I'm not for. I'm willing to stand up to political lobbyists of companies that are willing to. I'm willing to lay down the law and put my foot down against. I'm willing to stand up to corporate greed in the insurance industry. And in regards to the whole Affordable Care Act, it's a work in progress. It's made the whole Affordable Care Act is Hamiltonian in nature and very unstable, and it needs a Jeffersonian counterbalance in order to stabilize it. And I have Thomas Jefferson's abilities in order to stabilize the Affordable Care Act. The first thing I'm going to do is to challenge President Donald Trump to a weekly contest to see.
Thank you, Raul.
All right. Act as a financial blood transfusion for the industry. Well,
thank you.
All right.
You'll each have a chance to expand later. Thank you very much. Candidates, many of our guests, including me, may not know exactly what the insurance commissioner does. So I start off with this first question. What is your vision of the role and responsibilities of the Washington State Insurance Commissioner's office? And Raul, we'll start with you for your 2-minute response, please.
Okay, I see the responsibility of the insurance commissioner's office is to oversee the insurance industry within the state of Washington itself. I have the ability from the state of Washington to affect the global insurance industry because I'm an autistic savant. The insurance commissioner's office has broad powers to regulate the rates in the state of Washington itself, and there's oversee the entire industry. You need someone like a visionary in order to be insurance commissioner. There's so much work that there's the entire state of the insurance industry is a mess at the moment. It's highly unstable, and there's a lot of work that needs to be done to fix the Affordable Care Act and stabilize it.
Thank you, Raul. Anthony, your response, please.
Yeah, I appreciate that question, and that's one of the main reasons why I selected this race to run for, because it's been hidden in the shadows for decades now. We've had one person in control for 20 years, and this position is so unknown that as I've been traveling the state for 3 years, I'd say easily 98 out of 100 people don't realize what this position is or the type of authority and power it has. So I've been working to educate the voters on this, and it is an important role. It's a consumer protection role. It's not a legislative role, and it is a statewide position that the entire state of Washington gets to vote on. And it's often skipped down ballot because people don't quite understand what it can do. How I see this role is to really protect consumers' rights, rights to have access to the insurance products that they want, and to hold insurance companies accountable to the contracts they sell. You know, we know insurance is broken in the entire country. Lobbyists are ruling this country. The incumbent commissioner takes only 5% of his donations from inside the state of Washington because he's, captive to the insurance lobby. We saw it with the Obama Affordable Care Act, which just a couple of weeks ago, the Supreme Court ruled that $16 billion in taxpayer-funded subsidies are going to go into the lobbyist and insurance companies' pockets, costing everybody on this call more money for their insurance. So I'm going to go in there. I'm going to make insurance as affordable as possible and as accessible as possible so that each and every person can find a policy that brings value to their lives, whether it be their small business or their home insurance or their car insurance, and most importantly, their health insurance.
Thank you, Anthony. Candidates, given the challenges for funding support for behavioral health, how can the State Insurance Commissioner's Office help support behavioral health at a local and regional level? Anthony, we'll start with you for your response, please.
Yeah, this is one of those things where everybody can kind of have their niche issue, right? With health insurance, where maybe one person's issue could be a little bit different than the next. And I want to represent everybody, right? And really listen to the people that are finding gaps in coverage that they wish they had coverage for. So one of the things that we need to do is just loosen up the way that insurance policies work. I'd like to institute an a la carte type system, or at least make that possible. That won't be something that everybody wants, but it's something that everybody should have the choice to purchase. And why that's important is because no two people have the same needs, right? My 5-year-old son doesn't need the same thing as a 60-year-old grandmother. If you have a child with autism or, other behavioral issues or, mental health issues, right? The policy that person needs is going to be a little bit different than the next person's. And that's okay. We should embrace our diverse needs and work to allow an insurance market that can help everybody prosper and get the coverage that they need. Because right now, the way the systems works, so it's basically bankruptcy insurance. And at best, you have a high coverage, high deductible plan that costs too much. So I want to do things like allow a la carte coverage so you can pick and choose what you need coverage for, when you need it, and then adapt as your life changes. I think that's paramount to the American spirit, that we're all different. And in doing so, it'll also allow a lot different price points to enter the market so people can find affordable options for their need. And in closing, we need to open up more medical facilities. This doesn't directly affect insurance, but it would downhill. We need more medical doctors. We need more medical facilities so that these folks can have access to the treatments that they need, so that their insurance even has somebody to go pay. Because right now there's just a shortage in the medical facilities.
Thank you, Anthony. Raul, your response, please.
So the question is, how are we going to get, let me read the question properly. So it's, how am I going to get funding? Is that correct, for behavioral health?
Sure. Let me repeat. Can you state, or how will the Insurance Commissioner's Office help support behavioral health at a local and regional level?
Okay, so one of my ideas is to help support it is by one of the ideas that I have is to make life easier for doctors, psychiatrists themselves, by lowering the cost of medical malpractice insurance, which is a nightmare for it. I'm extremely sympathetic to what doctors go through. They put themselves through medical school and then residency, and then in order to be able to achieve this. And so one of the ways to do that is by lowering the costs of medical malpractice insurance. That would make life easier for them, and that would make it so that more medical doctors would be willing to make it affordable for them to offer services pro bono to people. And one of the ways that I'm going to go about lowering the cost of premiums for medical malpractice insurance is by taking there's a company called USAA who has the strictest measure for assessing risk in the auto insurance industry. Take their actuarial risk management measures and their algorithms and superimpose them on top of the existing medical malpractice insurance, and that would lower the payments that they make out, and that would lower the cost of medical malpractice insurance for doctors across the entire country, and that would free up their time, and they would be willing to offer service, make it affordable for them to offer the behavioral health services pro bono. That is my solution to how I would go about making it more accessible.
Thank you, Raul. Candidates, could the State Insurance Commissioner's Office help prevent or mitigate the effects of possible future pandemics? And Raul, we'll start with you for your response, please.
So yes, it can. In that, one of my ideas, we can design an insurance policy specifically for businesses and mid to small businesses that they can purchase. It would be a private insurance. It would be we can call it a pandemic insurance for future costs. We can learn from this nightmare that is the COVID-19 nightmare that is what we're going through currently, and we can design a private insurance policy for specific incidences like this. They would have the option to buy it, but it wouldn't be I would not support a government like mandate to requiring it by law to purchase a policy of that nature, but we can design a policy, private insurance policy for pandemics in the future. Once we go through this and we can learn from it.
Thank you, Raul. Anthony, your response, please.
Yeah, well, this is an issue where we've seen at all levels the failure of current government policies exasperating the issue and making it worse day after day after day. And as somebody that's been talking about things like allowing telemedicine for 5 to 10 years now, it's very interesting to see the incumbent insurance commissioner just now finally starting to talk about it. So we need to stop being so reactive and start thinking proactively. A possible pandemic and it is not out of the realm of possibility. It's something that we've all known could happen and has happened in the past. And we need government to start looking forward so they can prevent these issues from being worse than absolutely necessary. The other aspect of it is just the overall cost of medical care. Right now in a health insurance aspect, insurance carriers are covering, testing for the COVID virus. And right now there's only, I believe, 2 companies in the entire country even selling those tests. And if I remember correctly, they're over $3,000 a test. We need to increase the supply of goods and services in this country to reduce the cost. Right now, there is a high demand for these tests, and we can't get a hold of them. That's what makes them more expensive because it's a captive market. And ultimately, these costs that the insurance companies are paying for free right now, there's nobody's paying out of pocket for this. Those costs will get passed on to next year's premiums. So if we don't address the root cause of the cost of health care, the cost of insurance will always be too expensive. The other thing we've got to do is really just make things simpler. It's complex to file medical claims. It's complex to know what is or isn't covered. So I want to work with insurance carriers to provide more transparent policy declarations pages so that the average consumer doesn't need a law degree to read through their explanation of benefits.
Thank you, Anthony. Those first opening questions were provided by our Governmental Relations Committee, so we thank you all for that and the great work that they do. Candidates, your incumbent is not here to defend himself, so this is a great one here. You'll each have an opportunity to tell us why you're the best candidate to beat the incumbent. Anthony, we'll start with you, please.
Well, I'm discouraged at the lack of contribution from a lot of incumbents around the state of Washington right now. I think it's paramount to fair and equal elections that candidates show up to these things to give people a chance to hear from them. I am by far the best person for this job. I have a 10-year background in property and casualty insurance, but not only that, this has affected me personally. So that I'm going to go in there, I'm going to fight for everybody that's been harmed by the insurance market instead of just turning a blind eye to what happens. I have solutions that will reduce cost immediately, that take zero government power over your life, that takes zero effort other than removing some real basic rules and restrictions. And when we do that, we will see an increase in the number of policies available for you to choose from. We will see a decrease in the cost that you're paying. And overall, we'll see some more prosperity in the insurance market that will help individuals, it'll help small businesses. I absolutely abhor career politicians. I dislike crony capitalism. It frustrates me when I see all the money that goes into the campaign season and into the pockets of legislatures through the insurance lobby, through the medical device lobby, through the pharmaceutical lobby. And I've raised $75,000 and not a dime of it has come from any of those organizations. And I do that very specifically because I want it to be clear who I represent and have there be no discrepancy in who I'm beholden to. And this is a consumer protection role. So I want to protect consumers first and foremost. And I'm going to do everything I can to be able to look my wife, my 5-year-old son, and myself in the mirror every day, in the face every day, to make sure that I'm holding true to these principles that I've been talking about for 3 years.
Thank you, Anthony. Raul, your response, please.
All right. Well, so I I'm an autistic savant. I'm the first openly autistic individual to run for public office in the United States, I believe. And I have I have struggled with the filings of the PDC because I, just like Ronald Reagan, I don't take the PDC very seriously. They're not very effective at keeping dishonorable people out of politics. The reason, what makes me the most qualified person to be the insurance commissioner is that I have Ronald Reagan's abilities and many of Thomas Jefferson's abilities. And by the time I'm 40, I'm going to have Thomas Jefferson and Napoleon Bonaparte's abilities. I'm going to be an ideal Renaissance man by the time I'm 40. I am a public servant. I want to take the politics out of public service. And I found a colonel, a West Point graduate, to be my deputy insurance commissioner. The Office of Insurance Commissioner would be run like a well-oiled machine with me if I'm elected, because I'm going to bring in a West Point graduate to run the office on a day-to-day basis as my deputy insurance commissioner. And there's so much work in the insurance industry. The way the Reagan administration operated, it was 5 presidents operating as one. There's enough work in the insurance industry for 3 insurance commissioners to work as one, as co-insurance commissioners. That's how much work there is in how much the state of the insurance industry is a mess. There's so much work that needs to be done. There's more work than one. There's enough work for 3 insurance commissioners.
Thank you, Raul. All right, our next question, candidates, comes from A. Lang. What are the top 2 issues that the insurance commissioner can directly affect that you want to reform, and why? And Raul, we'll start with your response, please.
Okay. Let's see. Sorry. Could you repeat the question?
What would you say are the top 2 issues that
Okay.
that the commissioner can directly affect that you'd like to reform?
The top 2 issues are the current state of the auto insurance P&C industry itself. There's one company that is basically an anchor. It's pulling down. It's a strain on the entire auto insurance industry. The corners they're cutting are forcing other companies to raise their rates on every other company to raise their rates on their clients. That company is Geico. They're artificially the way they're going about saving their clients' money is not honorable and is not sustainable. That's my first priority, is dealing with Geico. Second is stabilizing the Affordable Care Act, which is it's a mess and it's a work in progress. It has made things worse in the short term for many people that had good health insurance coverage before the Affordable Care Act was implemented. And it's in desperate need of a Jeffersonian counterbalance in order to be stabilized, which is, I'm the only one who has a high enough IQ to be able to oversee the Jeffersonian counterbalance to the Affordable Care Act. Once it's achieved, the Affordable Care Act will be stabilized. So think of it this way. This is the Affordable Care Act. It's very top down. This is Jeffersonian bottom up. When this is achieved in the Affordable Care Act industry, the Affordable Care Act will be stabilized, and then it'll benefit, then it'll actually be the Affordable Care Act. And people will have access to better health insurance than they do currently.
Thank you. Anthony, your response, please.
Yeah, well, there's two real simple things. One of them is on the home and auto front, which is a lesser talked about issue, but it's the issue of mandatory credit checks on your home and auto insurance here in Washington. You know, the state of Washington is going through an economic crisis right now, and what that means is a lot of people are being forced to live beyond their means. They're being forced to use their credit cards to pay bills because they're out of work or their businesses are failing. And inherently, that might see a downtick in people's credit scores. Well, in 2016, the incumbent insurance commissioner mandated that every single company that pulls credit must pull credit at least once every 3 years. And this had a drastic negative effect on many, many people. As a property and casualty agent at the time, I took countless phone calls from people that were seeing rate increases because they had gone through a tough economic time coming out of the 2008 banking collapse. So I want to work to remove that mandate. And the nice thing is I can essentially do that unilaterally in the department because it's an internal rule as opposed to an outward RCW that the legislature passed. So that's something that I can tangibly start working on the day I get into office. From a home, excuse me, that's the property and casualty end. Now, in respect to health insurance, something that I'm gonna advocate for is buying insurance across state lines. That's something where the insurance commissioner's department here in Washington has taken a hands-off approach and really said that it's impossible to do. And I'd like to think that the American people, the people of Washington, are more creative than to say something's impossible. In the Northwest region here alone, in the Pacific Northwest, we have Idaho and Oregon. Why can't somebody from Washington purchase a policy from Idaho or vice versa? And as you move from one state to the next, right, it could be easier to have that policy follow you, which is what pretty much everything else does when you buy it in life and you move and your life changes. It comes with you. But for some reason, it doesn't happen that way for your insurance. So I believe if we do that, we'll open up the market. We'll see better competition and some lower rates. And the key there is just choice and flexibility.
Thank you, Anthony. Candidates, our next question comes from John Towers. How will you help out healthcare providers in keeping insurance companies competent in what services they offer for patients? And Anthony, we'll start with you with your response.
Well, the unfortunate thing is we've tried for decades to force insurance companies to do things that we like, and it's proven impossible because as heavily as regulated as they are, we still see negative outcomes, and it affects small medical providers the most. It affects your local pediatrician, your dentist, your family physician, your chiropractor. And what it's done is it's really forced a lot of doctors to either retire early or switch into working from their own small business to big conglomerate businesses. And we do need to reverse that. And I think entering competition in the market and putting consumer buying power back into the fold is what's going to be key. And what I mean by that is right now, the vast majority of people get insurance through their employer. And when that happens, the person that's using the insurance has little to zero buying power or say in what their policy covers and why. And when that happens, the insurance companies have all the power. It takes power from the doctors, it takes power from the patients, and we need to reverse that. And I believe in abolishing the tax subsidies that big corporations get for offering insurance so that small businesses and big businesses are put on equal footings. The second component to that is making sure that people buy the insurance policies, not the businesses. Okay, because when that happens, it puts you back in the position of picking which coverages you want. And when you do that, you can hold the insurance companies more accountable so that if you're going through a negative experience with claims and getting, pre-authorizations and getting your claims paid out for your local doctor, you're going to be in the position to hold those the insurance companies accountable instead of hoping some big corporation that's in bed with them does it for you. I have a heart for medical providers. They're getting burnt out. There is no one solution to this, but I absolutely believe entering competition into the market and putting the buying power back in the right hands is what will move the ball forward.
Thank you, Anthony. Raul, your response to the question, please.
Yes. So the best way to, I'm just like Mr. Welty and I were both conservative. We both believe in limited government, not overextending the offices reach to limit government regulations to keep them accountable. I want to keep design government regulations in a way such that they're logically sound. We don't want arbitrary government regulations in that would not help keep the companies accountable. And another way to help keep the help. The question is the services they offer, and the best way to keep at it is regulate that is have honorable beings, create mechanisms by which honorable beings can rise to the top and make it difficult for dishonorable beings to make it to make sure that the people running the companies are honorable. That's the best way to regulate, to make sure that the companies can regulate themselves. There are companies that refuse to do business in our state currently because our current commissioner's policies are too troublesome, and they wouldn't allow the companies to operate the way they want to. So having honorable beings in charge of health insurance companies, that's the best way to regulate what they do, the services they offer.
Thank you, Raul. Let me see if I can rephrase this next submittal into a question. It comes from H. Parmar, and candidates, H. Parmar states that pyramid schemes are really hurting, especially immigrant communities. What are your thoughts about the role of the insurance commissioner on curbing pyramid schemes that are going on in the insurance world in the state of Washington? And Raul, we'll start with your response, please.
Okay, so this is one area where we can increase some government regulations on to regulate the way multi-level marketing companies go about selling their products. There's honorable ways to do it, and then there's dishonorable ways to run a multi-level pyramid schemes as well. And the biggest example of shining example of what not to do is a company called Amway. They're the worst pyramid scheme in America. The way to, I'm actually for more government regulations to determine to regulate. There needs to be some sort of more regulation on the way these pyramid schemes operate in order to, again, people at the top need to be honorable. And honor is the solution. Honor above everything else.
Thank you, Raul. And Anthony, your response to the question, please.
You know, I'm going to be completely honest. I don't quite know what the listener's referring to, and I sincerely apologize. I've been on the campaign trail for 3 years. This is the first time a question like that's been asked, and I sincerely, I don't have an honest answer to give you because I'm not sure what you'd be referencing. But I will say this: as a libertarian, I stand against fraud and coercion and control over people's life and honor integrity. That's something where Mr. Patel and I fully agree. You know, if there's companies out there that are taking advantage of people and being dishonest in their business dealings and writing policies or contracts in ways that could be fraudulent or deceptive, I do believe there's a role for the government to come in and hold those companies accountable. And that's something that the current insurance commissioner has done a bit of, but it's been very one-sided. It's been one-sided with his ideology, and anybody that thinks differently doesn't get the same benefits as what the insurance commissioner is providing to other businesses. And that might be a difference between Mr. Patel and I as well, is he seems to be a bit one-sided in who he wants to go after and why. And while I understand some of these companies and most companies have some deficiency, I want to make sure that we're not calling out one company or one portion of the industry when much of the industry is broken. So I don't have any vendettas against any one company. I'm going to go in there and I'm going to kind of just start looking at things line by line by line, listening to consumer complaints and concerns, and make sure that I'm accessible to actually help those people. Because what we have right now is an insurance commissioner who doesn't respond. I hear complaints about that frequently, and he isn't out in the public offering any assistance. So I'm going to take a different role. I'm going to actually be a citizen's representative here. So I appreciate the question. I'm sorry that might be a little bit off topic of an answer, but feel free to give me a call and we can talk more.
Thank you, both candidates. Thank you, Anthony. Great question from Tracy Markley. It's a long one, so if you need me to repeat any of it, happy to do so. In addition to the federal grant funds already received in the last 2 years, what other funding sources are available to help address the issues our state is facing? And will you pursue additional grants and funding sources? And Anthony, we'll start with your response, please.
You know, I think we need to decouple ourselves from the federal government. I think we rely on grants too much. And the crux of that is they're taking the money from Washington citizens in the first place. So we have to rely on whoever's in control in the White House, whether it be Obama 4 years ago or Trump these last 4 years. And that's not healthy for Washington citizens, because no matter who's in control in the federal government, a good portion of the state here in Washington, maybe up to 50%, is going to be unhappy. So when we rely on the federal government for our grant money, it puts us at an immediate disadvantage. So I'm an advocate for reducing and removing taxes on insurance and healthcare and small businesses and income tax, so that local money stays local, so that we can fix these issues ourselves internally. So I'm going to take a bit of a different route, and I wouldn't be actively seeking out grants and funding sources, because I do think it perpetuates a bit of a broken system. Rather, what I want to do is reduce spending here in Washington. We have a huge budget shortfall that's going to just be terribly affecting the state revenue, as they call it, from reduced taxation with the businesses being closed. And if government doesn't decrease how much they spend, we're going to drive up deficit spending and the debt. And that's not okay for my son. It's not his responsibility to fix this. And if we don't do it properly, he's going to get stuck with the bill, just like we're seeing with $26.5 trillion in federal debt. So I want to reduce spending in the insurance department. It's 240 employees, $27 million in salary last I checked. We're going to reduce the number of employees in that department and reduce the overall salary capacity by at least 25% in my first 90 days, because it's absolutely imperative that we take that step to match what the other departments around the state are going to have to do to make sure that we don't go broke over the next year or two.
Thank you, Anthony. Raul, your response to the question, please.
Yes, if the federal grant money is available, I'm always open to taking it, but I'm not relying on it. I have other ingenuities of other ways of raising funds for the industry, such as my idea is to challenge President Donald Trump to a contest weekly. It would be like FDR's Fireside Chats, only the minimum requirement would be 10,000 times funnier, and all the proceeds from that can go to act as a financial blood transfusion for the health insurance industry in order to offset the costs of insurance, which are going up. And the second thing to do in order to reduce the cost of the healthcare itself, which is the fundamental root cause of the problem, is a fundamental design flaw in the American medical schools themselves, the way they were designed in the Victorian era, that don't account for, they're very inefficiently designed, and there needs to be more medical schools, as Mr. Welty put it as well. Then that needs to be, the fundamental flaw is it does not account, it treats human beings like they're terminators, which are not. Doctors are not human, they're not terminators, and they need to be treated as human beings in order to get the most efficient medical care out of them. They're not, that is the way to raise funds, is thinking outside of the box. That's one of my main ideas, is have a weekly contest to see who can make humanity laugh harder with the president. And there's a realistic possibility he'll accept my challenge. It requires.
Thank you, Raul.
Yeah.
Oh, apologize there. Candidates, our next question comes from Randy. Several years ago, many insurance providers bailed out of Washington State, reducing competition and driving up rates. What will you do to ensure there will be enough competition to keep insurance rates low? And Raul, we'll start with your response, please.
Okay, okay, so in order to keep the rates low, the most efficient way, way to lower the rates is by streamlining the inefficiencies in the way that currently the companies are operating. They're operating very inefficiently, and all that money that the inefficiencies can be lowered as the once the corporation is, if it's run as efficiently as possible, it has a lower overhead cost, and then that's how to keep the rates, health insurance premiums, which are very expensive, to stabilize them and even maybe slightly reduce them. But I don't see them any realistic possible way for them to go down significantly, the health insurance rates. There's no way to reduce the health insurance rate premiums significantly because of the cost of healthcare itself, which is tremendous. It's basically to make sure to help the corporations run more efficiently. That's the way to lower the costs.
Thank you. Anthony, your response, please.
Well, I absolutely believe there's a lot of money to be saved in health insurance. So I find it troubling that Mr. Patel doesn't think he can reduce the cost of health insurance very much in Washington, because I know I can. Um, when I first filed for this office, January 1st, 2018, the incumbent commissioner had just refiled for his sixth reelection, a mere 3 months after he won his fifth election. A couple months after that, the report came out for the upcoming year's insurance providers. And if I recall correctly, this number could be off by a figure or two. Forgive me, I'm brain farting a little bit right now. I believe there was 17 counties in the state of Washington that had one choice on insurance providers. 16 or 17. Forgive me for that number. Just recently, the insurance commissioner patted himself on the back, saying that every county will have at least two. So over his career, we've gone from hundreds of insurance carriers in all the different counties to some counties only having one or two options. And that absolutely needs to change. We need to increase the number of insurance providers in the state of Washington immediately. And that's why I'm running for this position, because I'm one of the people who lost insurance when they left the state of Washington. I had a company that we liked, appreciated, had good value, good coverage for us, and they left Washington. And it was due to overregulation here in the state of Washington. Nationally, Washington's known as the state that gets everything last when it comes to insurance. The policy is approved in 48 states around the country. Washington's going to be one of the last two or three countries to get that policy. We need to immediately make it easier for those companies to do business in the state of Washington. We need to bring them in, and opening it up across state lines will make it so that even if companies don't sell policies directly in Washington, that consumers still have the choice to buy policies outside of the state. That way, people in rural areas with two choices have 4 or 6 or 8 or 10 choices.
Thank you, Anthony. Candidates, Nicole would like to know, what's your stance on mandatory vaccinations, for example, COVID-19 vaccine? And Anthony, we'll start with your response, please.
Yeah, I mean, insurance should be able to cover whatever you want it to cover. It's really simple. That's why I support an a la carte coverage, so that each individual person can pick a policy that brings value to their life. So if there's a medical treatment out there that you want, I want you to have that. That's the difference between myself and most other candidates for office, is I don't pick and choose for you what I think is right for your life. I want to empower you to make choices for yourself, so you can have, the most power over your life. Because what we're seeing, and it's destructive right now with the way that the two-party system works, always picking and choosing winners and losers. And from year to year, that changes with the wind and whoever has the majority in the state legislature or in the federal offices in DC. I'm going to do the exact opposite. I'm going to get out of the way. I'm going to let consumers take power over their lives and over their insurance policies, so that they get what they want, not what I think they need. So it's really simple there.
Thank you, Anthony. Raul, your response, please.
So I do believe that I'm for mandatory vaccinations. I would actually streamline. It would reduce the number of COVID deaths. It would reduce the number of fatalities. It would reduce the number of diseases spreading. It would lower the cost of healthcare, actually, if everyone was vaccinated for common diseases that are once they're available. I'm pro mandatory vaccinations.
Thank you. All right, candidates, another long one, so stay with me here, and I'll repeat. If you're following along in the chat box, I'm at 906 from Tammy. Many healthcare policies discriminate by refusing coverage for what they call experimental, and will deny over and over to wear down consumers. Many of these experimental, read cutting edge treatments, are for those with autoimmune disorders, vaccine injuries, and the like. What can be done to assure they don't get away with this discrimination? And Raul, we'll start with your response, please.
Okay, let's see. How to, let's see. Well, I guess the main reason the companies denied the current experimental coverage is because they would go bankrupt if offered it. I'm guessing it has to do with the cost of providing it. So again, that's why I don't see the cost of health insurance going down significantly for people that want it, because there's just the cost of medicine is going up itself. The cost itself of providing the best possible health care that one needs is always going to go up. And the best way to prevent companies from denying that is by making sure that boosting their finances, by making sure having business-friendly climates where the companies would have by appealing to their profits center is the best way to keep the health insurance companies from denying these experimental things. If they can afford to do it, they will most likely afford to. If a company can afford to offer, they will offer that experimental procedure. It has to do with finances.
Thank you, Ro. Anthony, your response, please.
Well, this is a compounding issue that starts with the federal government and the FDA, all the way down to the state insurance commissioner really deciding what a policy can and can't cover. So sounds a little bit like a broken record here, but I believe we need to put consumers back in control. Until we, the consumer, each individual person gets to pick what type of coverage they want, the insurance companies have little incentive to change how they do business. If we don't change that, nothing that Tammy asked about is likely to get fair coverage. So that's what we need to do. We need to put consumers back in control. We need to open up the market so that you get to pick and choose what type of coverages you get. It needs to be flexible, because from one year to the next, your life might change or likely will change. We need to allow insurance to be that flexible. And in most other areas of insurance, it really can be, right? Your car insurance, you get to go through and pick, do you want, high coverage or low coverage? Do you want comprehensive and collision or just one or the other? Do you want towing coverage, right? We need to make health insurance work that same way, so that you can have the coverage that you need and want in a given circumstance. And the insurance commissioner really doesn't believe in that mentality. He believes in a one-size-fits-all solution for everybody, so that we're all equally as miserable with the insurance system that we have. I believe that's by design, and I think that it needs to change. I want to empower individuals to take back control of their lives, and I want you to have access to the medical treatments you need. There's things like these experimental medications that the federal government up even till just with President Trump, I think 2 years ago, were illegal to even do, right? The Right to Try Act. We need to empower that mentality that you, the consumer, control your medical care, not the government, not the insurance companies.
Thank you, Anthony. Candidates, our guest John Bowen writes, do you believe the Office of Insurance Commissioner is constitutionally empowered to run insurance companies from Olympia? For example, choosing leadership, fixing inefficiencies, and even bringing companies under state control. And Anthony, we'll start with your response, please.
No, I don't believe the insurance company, insurance commissioner, or any government representative should have the power to tell any big or small company how they run their business. Those business owners know what's best for them, and consumers know what's best for them. We need to get the government out of that conversation. And I think it's ridiculous to think that the state insurance commissioner could go into a given insurance company, tell them how to run their books to make them more efficient. What we need to do is empower smaller upstart companies to come into the market so that they can push the envelope and become more efficient, and really by nature of competition, encourage those companies to change their business practices. But the idea that the Constitution would allow me as an insurance commissioner to go into Geico or USAA and say, hey, we're going to tell you who you can hire, how you can run your paperwork, I think that's not constitutional. I believe in Article 1, Section 1, consent of the governed. And I think that would be a gross overreach of executive power.
Thank you, Anthony. Raul, your response, please.
Yes, it is a violation of the Constitution for the insurance commissioner to use the office of insurance commissioner to go about telling company how to use it, but it's in plain English. It's written in the Constitution. That's an overreach of the government powers. The government is not allowed to do that. It's written in plain English. So no, the office does not have to completely regulate, run the company for the private company. No, the office does not have that authority. According to the Constitution. Yeah.
Thank you, Raul. Are you finished? Sorry, I didn't want to cut you off.
No, I'm finished. Yeah.
Perfect. Candidates, Terry Kinney states, as a concealed carry permit holder, he currently cannot purchase insurance for his legal defense in the event he needs to use his weapon. How would you change this policy? And Raul, we'll start with your response, please.
Okay. Well, I'm for private citizens owning a weapon, and one of the things I would do is bring back better coverage for people, private citizens who don't violate the law, have a God-given right to own as many weapons as they choose, and have the best available insurance for them. And I would encourage private companies to offer that. I would definitely repeal that statement that you're not allowed to purchase insurance for it. That's one of the first things I would do in office if I'm elected, is repeal that.
Thank you. Anthony, your response, please.
Yeah, and I'm going to use part of my 2 minutes here to backtrack to the former question, because it seems like Mr. Patel's contradicted himself, where earlier in the call he explicitly said he wanted to really control how USAA did business, and then a minute ago said it was unconstitutional. So I would love to hear more on that later. But in respect to the gun insurance thing, this is an issue that I've led on for a year and a half now since it came to my attention. And in the first debate that Mr. Patel and I had with, he didn't actually even know about that issue. I think he learned about it from our debate. So in respect to USCCA carry insurance, the NRA branded liability legal defense insurance, there is actually no state law that prohibits those policies being sold. The state insurance commissioner is overreaching, and he's threatened them with lawsuits if they conduct business. And what he's trying to do is he's trying to force a court case on this, which could theoretically go against these insurance carriers without actually an RCW being written. I have it in writing from his office that this is not a law. It's simply public policy, which means he's trying to legislate from the bench, which I think is wrong. We shouldn't be threatening companies with fines for selling a product that has zero consumer complaints and one that actually has zero claims. I've spoken at multiple rallies about this issue. You can find it on my YouTube. I got a 5-minute video really diving into this issue. And day one, I will allow those companies to start selling insurance again. And rather, frankly, it's not even insurance. And the fact that the insurance commissioner is even trying to make it in that conversation, I think is poor. So we'll just get out of the way. I'll work with the state legislature to put some, permanent writing in place to allow those policies so that responsible gun owners can buy the insurance that they want.
Thank you, Anthony. Candidates, last question, and then we'll move on to closing. This one comes from Jeff Madsen. Do you feel the insurance commissioner should be an appointed position rather than an elected position? Why or why not? And Anthony, we'll start with your response first.
Yeah, thank you for that question, Jeff. This is one of the areas where Washington is blessed and lucky. I think we're one of 10 other states that allow the insurance commissioner's position to be elected. In other states, the governor gets to appoint. And that's exactly what will happen is if I'm not elected this year. The incumbent commissioner, 76 years old, he's had a couple of health issues the last couple of years, and he's nearing retirement. It's fairly well known that if he wins re-election, he won't serve his full term, which means the governor would get to appoint that person. So I'm fully against that, and that's one of the reasons why I've ran so hard for this race and really put my entire life on hold. I sold half of what I owned, put the other half in storage. I moved my family into a travel trailer. I've been campaigning full time on around the state, everywhere from Vancouver, Washington to Spokane to Omak to Long Beach to Seattle and Wenatchee and Tri-Cities and everywhere in between, hauling a 27-foot travel trailer that I've lived in. doing everything I can to expose this position and make sure people understand how important it is that they make educated choices on who they elect, because we are so lucky to be able to elect for this position. I do not believe it should be an appointed position. I believe it should have term limits as well. And I believe the position gets far too much money in salary and benefits and pension as well. I believe the people that hold this office should live like average people. So I'm calling for a 50% reduction in salary and removing the pension that this department gets paid, because the general public doesn't get those benefits. They have to shop for insurance on the open market. And I do not believe representatives, servants of this state, should be more well off by taking a government position. So I oppose doing this as an appointed position. I support term limits. I'm going to do everything I can to represent the average Washingtonian in this role.
Thank you, Anthony. And Raul, your response to the question, please.
Yes, I'm in agreement with Mr. Welty on this issue. It should be a publicly elected position. It could lead to far more corruption if it's an appointed position, because it needs to be a publicly elected position, because the public should have a right to decide on how they get to oversee their insurance industry, and not appoint a governor who doesn't know anything about insurance to appoint someone else to be in the position. That's one of the areas where Washington the state itself gets it right, in that it should be a publicly elected position permanently for as long as America is a country.
Thank you, Raul. Candidates, great job fielding all those questions. It's now time for 2 minutes of final comment. Anthony Welty, we will start with you, please.
Cool. And I see a question here from Will Patton regarding the AG and the gun insurance. And yes, I do believe that could be an issue as well, Mr. Patton. The insurance commissioner is the authority on this topic. And while the AG, I do believe, absolutely put him up to this, I'm going to push back. And I'll actually help take the state of Washington to court to sue for consumer rights to have that policy. So I'm going to do the exact opposite of what the incumbent's done. But it's things like this that are why I'm the clear choice for this position, as I have everybody's rights in mind. I have clear and concise plans, actionable items like decentralizing the department so that 240 employees don't just live and work in Olympia, that if you want to have your voice heard, that you don't have to take a day off of work to go to Olympia to have your voice heard. I want to open up departments around the state with a mindset to not only bring consumers back into the fold with government and give them somebody to go talk to, but also reducing costs and increasing the level of employees that we have to choose from by increasing the hiring pool throughout the entire state of Washington. I believe in decentralization, making sure that the insurance commissioner is accountable to you, and so that there's a desk in your community to go talk to. I'm going to reduce the cost of insurance. I've been advocating for removing $600 million in taxes on insurance. That'll put more money back in your pockets. I want to make insurance companies accountable to the contracts that we know that they're breaking. And I'm going to do it with the utmost transparency. Unlike the incumbent insurance commissioner, I know how to use Zoom. I know how to use Facebook. I know how to use Twitter. And these are viable tools in our tool belt to educate the public on what's going on in the legislature. And I want to close with this. It's not just what's going on in the legislature that I agree with, right? It's what's going on both sides of the aisle, because everybody deserves to know what's happening behind closed doors. I'm going to have an open door policy and really just try to represent the average person. So check out anthonywelty.com. Reach out to me if you have any additional questions.
Thank you, Anthony. Final comments from Chirayu Patel.
All right. My name is Chirayu Patel, and I'd like to be the Ninth Insurance Commissioner of the state of Washington. If I'm elected, the office is going to be run like a well-oiled machine. There's going to be a West Point graduate running day-to-day operations that can accommodate the office. That's my deputy insurance commissioner, who I'm going to bring in to run the office on a day-to-day basis. And I believe, and from that, I'm the only candidate able to, from the state of Washington itself, to revolutionize the entire global insurance industry from the state of Washington itself.
Thank you again, Ro. Folks, that concludes our questions and also our final comments. Now, our committee representative, Kurt Grimmer, he has his most favorite thing to do is to help keep time with his timing cards. His second favorite thing to do is to tell you what's coming up in the next public affair forums. Kurt, take it away.
Yeah, thank you, candidates, and thank you, Doug. Next week, we'll have the candidates for the Secretary of State's office in the public forum, so please join us. And then the following week, which is the first week of August, and that's primary week, August 4th, Tuesday is the primary day. On August 6th, Thursday, we'll have City of Gig Harbor Mayor Kuhn addressing us and giving us an update on what's going on with the city. And then the week after that, we'll get back to candidate forums with the Pierce County executive race, including Bruce Dammeyer and Larry Sequist. And then the following week after that, August 20th, John McCarthy, the president of the Port of Tacoma Commission, will give us a presentation on the Port of Tacoma's strategic plan. And then from then on to the rest of the general election, we're going to try to get the general election candidates in for a public forum, particularly the ones that we weren't able to host during the primaries because there were just so many candidates. So we're going to see if we get the governor's race in, the lieutenant governor, commissioner of public lands, superintendent of public instruction, and Washington State treasurer. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Grimmer. I'd also like to thank my fellow committee representatives, Terry Lee, John Shoemaker, the Gig Harbor Chamber of Commerce, thank you. And of course, our great sponsor, the Peninsula Light Company. And most importantly, we want to thank all of you for joining us today. We can't have a public affair forum without members of the public, and it's so great to see you. And thank you, candidates, Anthony Welty and Raju Patel. Thank you for spending your time with us today. It means a lot. That concludes our public affair forum for today. And we hope that you all stay happy and healthy and make it a great day.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you all.